I never thought my life could change so drastically in a single moment. 1 second, everything felt normal, routine, predictable, safe. The next, I was staring at something that made my chest tighten, my hands go numb, and my mind spiral into a place I wasn't ready for. My name is Clyde, and for 7 years, I believed I had a strong marriage. Mabel and I weren't perfect, no couple is, but we had stability, trust, or so I thought. She works long hours as a night nurse. The demanding shifts, the exhaustion in her voice when she'd call between rounds, the way she'd collapse into bed the moment she got home. It all felt so real. I never questioned it. I never questioned her. But this morning, everything changed. She walked through the front door at 7:10 a.m., just like always. Her hair was a little messy, her scrubs slightly wrinkled. She gave me that familiar, tired smile and dropped her bag by the door. "I need a shower," she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. I nodded, still half asleep myself, stirring sugar into my coffee. Part 1. The weight of silence. There's a certain kind of silence that wraps around you when the truth hits. Cold, suffocating, like standing outside in the dead of winter with no coat, no warmth, just the raw exposure of what you refuse to see. That's how it felt this morning when I found it. I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't suspicious, angry, or paranoid. If anything, I was content, settled in the quiet rhythm of our life together. 7 years of marriage will do that. You stop questioning the little things. You trust. Mabel came home from her shift at exactly 7:13 a.m. She always said hospitals ran on chaos, but she ran on precision. A woman of routines. She walked through the door, let out a long sigh, and pulled off her sneakers with an exhausted groan. I barely looked up from my coffee. It was just another morning. Rough night? I asked. She nodded, rubbing the back of her neck. Yeah, I need a shower. Her voice was distant, but I didn't think much of it. Night shifts took a toll, and I had learned not to push for details when she was this drained. She trudged toward the bathroom, and I took another sip of coffee, already thinking about my own day. Emails, meetings, the usual. Then I saw it. Her work bag, unzipped and slumped against the chair. At first, I wasn't sure what caught my attention. Maybe it was the way it leaned open, almost inviting. Maybe it was something deeper, an instinct I hadn't acknowledged until that moment. I glanced toward the bathroom. The water had already started running. I told myself I was being ridiculous, but my hands were moving before I could stop them. Inside, beneath her folded scrub jacket, was a crumpled receipt. I shouldn't have cared, but something about it, maybe the time stamp, maybe the location, made my pulse quicken. 1:42 a.m. The Blue Haven Inn. I felt my stomach clench. The Blue Haven wasn't anywhere near the hospital. It wasn't even on her usual route home. My hands shook as I flattened the paper, my eyes scanning for an explanation. 2 items. A bottle of wine. A room for 2. The coffee in my mouth turned bitter. I stared at the receipt, willing it to make sense. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation. But deep inside, something cracked. Something I had trusted without question for 7 years. The shower was still running. I set the receipt down carefully, as if touching it too long would burn me. My breathing was uneven, my chest tight. The logical part of me said to wait, to hear her out. But the other part, the one that had just glimpsed a version of my wife I didn't recognize, was already unraveling. The water shut off. The door creaked open. Mabel walked into the bedroom, towel wrapped around her, eyes heavy with exhaustion. When she saw my face, she froze. And in that moment, I knew. She knew exactly what I had found. The moment Mabel saw my face, I watched the color drain from hers. There was no confusion, no casual greeting, just a sharp inhale, like she had stepped barefoot onto broken glass. I was still sitting at the table, my fingers resting lightly on the receipt as if it might dissolve under my touch. My coffee had gone cold, untouched since the moment I pulled that little slip of paper from her bag. Mabel stood there, wrapped in a towel, her damp hair dripping onto the hardwood floor. I could see the gears turning in her head, her eyes darting from me to the bag, then back again. For a few agonizing seconds, neither of us spoke. Then, She forced a breath and tried to play it off. "You're up early," she said, her voice thin, careful. I didn't answer. Instead, I lifted the receipt and turned it toward her, watching the way her entire body tensed. She barely glanced at it before looking away, rubbing the towel against her damp arms like she was suddenly cold. "Tell me it's not what I think it is." My voice came out steadier than I expected. I didn't feel steady. Mabel let out a nervous laugh, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Clyde, come on. What are you even?" "Don't." My hand tightened around the receipt. "Just tell me the truth." Her mouth opened, then closed. I could see the war happening behind her eyes, the frantic search for an explanation that wouldn't sound like a lie. And in that hesitation, I had my answer. She wasn't going to deny it. My heart pounded in my ears. I wanted to feel angry, but all I felt was numb. "Say something," I pressed, my voice lower now. "Tell me why you were there. Why you paid for a room. At almost 2 a.m. Mabel exhaled slowly, her grip on the towel tightening. When she finally spoke, her voice was almost too quiet to hear. "It's not what you think." That was it. No denial, no outrage. Just that same tired phrase people use when they've already lost the fight. I laughed, but it came out hollow. "Then explain it to me." She swallowed hard, taking a hesitant step toward the dresser. "I was helping someone." I blinked. "Helping? A friend. He needed a place to stay, and I? Who?" I cut in. She hesitated. Too long. "Who, Mabel?" She glanced at the dresser, as if her answer was hidden somewhere among her neatly folded clothes. Then, barely above a whisper, "Ben." The name hit me like a gut punch. Ben was a doctor at her hospital. Young, good-looking, the kind of guy who always had a joke ready. I had met him once, at a staff barbecue. He shook my hand with an easy grin and said, "Man, your wife is the hardest worker in that hospital. You're lucky." Lucky. I stared at her, trying to process the weight of that name. The casual way she had just dropped it between us like it meant nothing. She was already shaking her head, like she could erase the moment if she just denied it hard enough. "It wasn't like that, Clyde. He had a fight with his girlfriend. He had nowhere to go. I was just helping." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the way her fingers twitched, the way she wouldn't look me in the eye, it was all too much. Then why lie? My voice cracked slightly. "Why not tell me?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. No answer. I pushed my chair back slowly, standing up. She took half a step back, gripping her towel like it was the only thing keeping her together. "Mabel," I said carefully, "if I check your phone right now, what will I find?" Her whole body went rigid. And just like that, the last piece fell into place. The silence that followed my question was worse than if she had screamed at me. I stood there, gripping the edge of the table, my breath coming in shallow bursts. Mabel wasn't moving. Her knuckles had gone white where they clutched the towel against her chest, as if that flimsy piece of fabric was the only thing holding her together. I could see it in her eyes, the calculation, the hesitation, the fear. I don't know what you mean," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. "Mabel, I'm going to ask you one more time. If I check your phone right now, will I find?" She took the smallest step back, toward the dresser. I knew what she was thinking. Her phone was in there. She had tucked it away like it was just another part of her routine. But now, it might as well have been a ticking bomb. "Just let me explain," she pleaded, her voice cracking slightly. I clenched my jaw. "Then explain." She opened her mouth, then closed it. The hesitation stretched between us, growing heavier by the second. And with each beat of silence, something inside me hardened. She wasn't going to explain, because there was no explanation that wouldn't unravel everything. I took a step forward, and she instinctively took another step back, pressing herself against the dresser. "I didn't do anything wrong," she tried again. But the words felt rehearsed, like she had been preparing them for this exact moment. "Then let me see your phone." Mabel's breathing hitched. And that was it. That was the moment I knew, without a doubt, that my marriage wasn't what I thought it was. She didn't answer. She didn't move. She just stood there, eyes darting toward the dresser, then back to me, like a cornered animal trying to find an escape route. I walked past her before she could react. Clyde, wait. But I was already pulling the drawer open. The phone was sitting on top of her neatly folded shirts, face down. I reached for it, but before I could grab it, her hand shot out, gripping my wrist. Stop, she whispered. I looked up at her. Why? Her fingers tightened, but she had no answer. No defense. I didn't yank my arm away. I didn't have to. The moment stretched too long, and she let go first. I picked up the phone, turning it over. The screen was locked, but the notifications were there. Dozens of them. Missed calls. Messages. And one name that made my stomach turn. Ben. I swallowed the lump in my throat and tapped the screen. The messages stacked up like a dam waiting to burst. 1:57 a.m. Had a great night. You're amazing. 2:30 a.m. Can't wait to see you again. Let me know when you're free. 4:12 a.m. Miss you already. My grip on the phone tightened. My pulse pounded in my ears. Mabel's breath came out in a shaky exhale. Clyde, I turned the screen toward her, my hands steady despite the way my insides felt like they were collapsing in on themselves. She pressed her lips together, her eyes glistening, her entire body tensed like she was bracing for impact. I could barely hear my own voice over the roaring in my head. How long? She didn't answer. Mabel. My voice was eerily calm. How long? She blinked rapidly, her fingers curling into the fabric of her towel. A few weeks, she finally choked out. A sharp, bitter laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. A few weeks, I repeated, my voice hollow. As if that made it better. As if that changed anything. I turned the phone back to face me, scrolling through the messages with slow, deliberate movements. The words blurred together, but the meaning was clear. It wasn't just one night. It wasn't just a mistake. This was something deeper, ongoing. She had been coming home to me, kissing me, sharing my bed, all while carrying someone else's words in her pocket. I set the phone down on the dresser, my hands suddenly feeling too heavy. When I finally looked back at her, she had tears in her eyes. But I didn't feel sympathy. I didn't feel anger. I just felt empty. You should get dressed, I said quietly, stepping back. I can't look at you right now. Her lip trembled. Clyde, please. But I was already walking away. I closed the bedroom door behind me, pressing my hands against it like I could physically keep everything I had just learned from spilling out into the rest of the house. My chest felt hollow, like someone had reached inside and scooped out everything that had made me feel whole. The house was too quiet. I wanted to smash something, to break the silence with the kind of noise that matched what was happening inside my head. But I didn't. I just stood there, staring at the wood grain of the door, hearing the muffled sounds of Mabel moving inside the bedroom. She was getting dressed, like I had asked. I should have left. I should have grabbed my keys and walked out. But I didn't. Instead, I turned and walked back toward the kitchen, needing something, anything, to focus on. The coffee I had abandoned earlier sat untouched on the counter, long gone cold. I dumped it down the sink and turned on the faucet, watching the water swirl away like it could take my thoughts with it. It didn't. A chair scraped against the floor behind me. I didn't turn around. Clyde. Mabel's voice was quiet, hesitant. I let out a slow breath through my nose, gripping the edge of the sink. Did you think I wouldn't find out? My voice was steady, but it didn't feel like my own. She didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her words were fragile, like she wasn't even sure she believed them. I never wanted to hurt you. I turned then, slowly. She was standing near the table, arms wrapped around herself like she was the one who needed comfort. She had changed into jeans and a sweater, her damp hair curling slightly at the ends. She looked smaller somehow, like she was folding in on herself. I should have felt something, anger, hatred, sorrow, but all I felt was tired. Then why did you? Mabel bit her lip, her eyes darting to the side before meeting mine again. It wasn't supposed to happen. I scoffed, shaking my head. That's not an answer. She swallowed, shifting her weight. It just started. I don't even know when it got out of control. I was working so much, and you were busy with your own things, and I held up a hand. Stop. She froze. I took a slow step forward, my voice barely above a whisper. Do you even hear yourself? You're blaming our schedules? Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't care. Clyde, she tried again, but I cut her off. Was it ever going to stop? Mabel's mouth opened, then closed. There it was. The final, damning silence. I let out a bitter laugh, running a hand down my face. Right. That's what I thought. She reached for me then, like she could undo everything with one touch. Please, I still love you. I jerked back before she could make contact, and for the first time since this morning, something inside me snapped. No, Mabel. You don't. My voice was steel now, sharp and cutting. You don't cheat on someone you love. She flinched, her fingers curling into fists at her sides. I exhaled slowly, stepping back toward the doorway. I need time. Space. Don't talk to me right now. Where are you going? She asked, her voice cracking. I grabbed my keys off the counter, but I didn't look back. Anywhere but here. And then, I walked out the door, leaving her behind. The cold air hit me like a slap the moment I stepped outside. I hadn't grabbed a jacket, hadn't even thought about where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay in that house. Not with her, not with the weight of everything I had just learned pressing down on my chest like a stone. I got into my car and started the engine, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The house loomed in my rearview mirror, a place that had once been my sanctuary but now felt foreign, tainted. Where was I supposed to go? I thought about calling someone. My brother, maybe, or an old friend. But what was I supposed to say? Hey, my wife has been sneaking around with another man while I was at home thinking she was working late? I wasn't ready to say the words out loud. Not yet. So I just drove. The streets blurred past me, the early morning light making everything feel too bright, too sharp. My mind kept replaying the last hour over and over, twisting in on itself, searching for some hidden meaning that would make this all less real. Had there been signs? Had I been blind, oblivious? Or had she just been that good at lying? I didn't know how long I drove, but eventually, I ended up in an empty parking lot outside an old diner. The neon sign flickered weakly, and the smell of coffee and bacon drifted through the air. It was as good a place as any. I parked, shut off the engine, and just sat there for a moment, staring at the cracked vinyl of the steering wheel. Then, with a deep breath, I got out and walked inside. The place was nearly empty. A waitress with tired eyes and a messy ponytail greeted me with a nod, motioning toward a booth by the window. I slid into the seat, the vinyl creaking beneath me. "What can I get ya?" she asked, pulling out a notepad. I stared at the menu without really seeing it. My appetite was non-existent, but my throat was dry. "Just coffee," I said. She nodded and walked away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I pulled out my phone, hesitating before unlocking it. Part of me expected a flood of texts from Mabel. Apologies, explanations, please. But there was nothing. I didn't know if that made me feel better or worse. The coffee arrived, steaming and bitter, and I wrapped my hands around the mug, letting the heat seep into my fingers. And then, without thinking, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I searched for Ben. I didn't even know why. Maybe I just needed to see his face, to remind myself that this wasn't some nightmare I'd wake up from. His social media was easy to find, too easy. His profile was full of pictures from work, smiling in scrubs, posing with other doctors, even a few posts about long nights at the hospital. But then, I saw it. A post from 3 weeks ago. A blurry photo of a dimly lit hotel room, a half-empty bottle of wine on the nightstand. The caption read, "The best nights are the ones you don't plan." My blood ran cold. I knew that bottle. I had seen it before. And I knew, without a doubt, that Mabel had been there. I gripped my phone so hard my fingers ached. The proof was right in front of me, staring me down like a loaded gun. This wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just a moment of weakness. It was planned. And that was when the rage finally set in. The coffee in front of me had gone cold, untouched. My phone sat on the table, the screen still lit with that post. Ben's careless little declaration to the world, sitting out in the open, as if it meant nothing. As if I meant nothing. I should have felt something other than this quiet, consuming rage. Maybe heartbreak. Maybe grief. But no, there was just this weight. Like I had been holding my breath underwater for too long, and now I was realizing there was no surface to break through. I read the caption again. The best nights are the ones you don't plan. And then I did something reckless. I clicked on his profile picture, scrolled through his friends list, and there she was, Mabel. She had never mentioned being connected with him online. But then again, why would she? I clicked on her profile, half expecting to see something incriminating, something that would confirm what I already knew. But her page was carefully curated, the way it had always been. Vacation photos. Pictures of us at dinner. Her status still read married. Like nothing had changed. Like the last 7 years of my life hadn't just gone up in flames. I clenched my jaw, locked my phone, and shoved it onto the table. The waitress passed by again, giving me a quick glance before refilling my cup. She hesitated, like she could sense something was off. "You okay, hon?" I forced a nod. "Yeah, just long morning." She gave me a knowing look, one that told me she had probably seen her fair share of people sitting in this exact spot, staring into a cup of coffee like it could answer all their questions. "Well, coffee helps," she said, offering a small smile before walking off. I wished it did. I must have sat there for over an hour, staring at the wall, my mind running in circles. At some point, my phone buzzed. I didn't check it right away. I wasn't ready. But eventually, I gave in. "Mabel, Clyde, please come home so we can talk." A second message. "Mabel, I know you're hurting. Just come back, please. Let me explain." Explain. As if there was anything left to explain. I stared at the messages, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. What was I supposed to say? That I had just seen proof of what she had done? That I could practically hear Ben's laughter behind that stupid caption? I locked my phone and leaned back against the booth, letting out a slow breath. I wasn't going home. Not yet. I needed clarity, and I wasn't going to get it from her. I didn't know where I was driving until I was already halfway there. The hospital. It wasn't smart. It wasn't rational, but I couldn't help myself. I needed to see it. The place where she had spent all those late nights, where she had built this other life behind my back. I pulled into the parking lot and turned off the engine, gripping the wheel so tight my fingers ached. I wasn't planning to go inside. I wasn't sure what I was planning at all. But then I saw him, Ben, walking toward his car, still in his scrubs. He looked like he hadn't slept, his hair slightly disheveled. He was checking his phone, smiling at something. I swallowed the bitterness rising in my throat. I could have confronted him. I could have stepped out, made a scene, demanded answers. But what would that change? Nothing. So I just sat there, watching as he got into his car, laughing at something on his screen before driving off. And all I could think was, how long had I been the punchline of this joke? I watched Ben's car disappear down the road, my fingers still locked around the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white. I wasn't sure what I expected. That he'd look around, see me sitting there, and suddenly feel guilty? That he'd hesitate before getting into his car, as if he knew his world was about to collapse like mine had? No, he didn't care. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal itself. It was how easy it seemed for him. How effortless. Like I was just some nameless guy in the background, a forgotten detail in the life he had built with my wife. I exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over my jaw. I needed to leave. Sitting here, staring at a building where I had thought my wife was working every night, it was eating me alive. I pulled out of the parking lot, driving with no destination, my mind racing in a dozen directions at once. Mabel's text still sat unread. I could picture her waiting at home, pacing, rehearsing whatever story she thought might salvage this. Maybe she was crying, maybe she was angry at herself, or maybe she was just scared. Scared that the person who had trusted her blindly now saw her for what she really was. I pulled into a gas station, needing a break from the suffocating silence of my car. The neon lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly glow over the pavement. I grabbed my phone, hesitating before unlocking it. More texts. "Mabel, please, Clyde. Just come home. I know I hurt you. Just talk to me." Another one. "Mabel, I don't want to lose you." My hands tightened around the phone. I wasn't sure if I wanted to respond. I wasn't sure if I could trust anything that came out of her mouth. But before I could think too hard about it, my phone buzzed again. Not a text this time. A call. Not from Mabel. From Rachel. I frowned, staring at the screen. Rachel was Mabel's coworker, a mutual acquaintance, not exactly a friend, but someone I had met a handful of times at work gatherings. Why was she calling me? A strange feeling settled in my chest as I swiped to answer. Hello? There was silence on the other end for a moment, and then a quiet inhale. Clyde. Rachel's voice was soft, hesitant. Yeah. She hesitated again. I could hear movement in the background, maybe papers rustling, the distant sound of a television. I don't know if I should be calling you, she admitted, but I saw your car at the hospital earlier and I sat up straighter. And you just what? Another pause. Are you okay? The question caught me off guard. I let out a humorless chuckle. Not really. Rachel sighed. I figured. I rubbed a hand over my face. Why are you calling, Rachel? A longer pause this time. Then, carefully, she said, I don't know what Mabel told you, but if she said she was working last night, she wasn't. I went still. Rachel exhaled, almost like she had been holding her breath. She's been calling in sick on and off for the last few weeks. Not officially, though. She's been switching shifts, asking for coverage, trading nights with other nurses. My fingers went cold. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. So she hasn't been at work? No, Rachel confirmed. And I know it's not my place, but I've seen things, heard things. I just didn't think it was my business. But when I saw you today, she trailed off. I squeezed my eyes shut. What things, Rachel? She hesitated. She's been spending a lot of time with Ben. Not just at work. Outside of it, too. People talk. You know? They've been seen together at restaurants, bars. A couple of the other nurses mentioned seeing them at the Blue Haven a few times. The Blue Haven. The same place on the receipt I had found. My stomach turned. I gritted my teeth, gripping the phone tighter. How long? Rachel's voice was barely above a whisper. Months. Everything inside me felt like it cracked apart at once. Months. Not days. Not weeks. Months. I'm sorry, Clyde, Rachel said softly. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Then I heard it, someone calling Rachel's name in the background. She muttered something back, then sighed into the phone. I have to go. But I thought you should know. Thank you, I forced out. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. She exhaled again. Take care of yourself, okay? And then she was gone. I stared at my phone, my grip tightening. I had been fooled, lied to, manipulated, played. And not just for a moment of weakness. This had been an ongoing deception, a double life. A slow-burning betrayal that had taken months to unravel. I looked out at the empty gas station parking lot, my reflection staring back at me in the darkened window of my car. Mabel was waiting at home, waiting for me to walk through that door so she could spin whatever story she thought I'd believe. But I wasn't the same man I was this morning, and I wasn't going home as the husband she once knew. I sat in the parking lot long after Rachel hung up, the weight of her words pressing down on me like a lead blanket. Months. Not a mistake. Not a drunken lapse in judgment. This was deliberate. Calculated. I wasn't sure how long I stayed there, staring at nothing, my mind looping through every moment of my marriage with fresh eyes. The late nights. The tired smiles. The times she reached for her phone in bed, turning the screen away from me. The sudden increase in extra shifts, the weekend getaways with her work friends. I thought back to every time I had kissed her goodbye before she left for a night shift. How many of those nights had she gone to him instead? I had been living a lie, and I didn't even know it. I finally turned the key in the ignition, the car rumbling to life. But I didn't go home. Not yet. First, I needed to make a stop. The house felt smaller when I walked in, like the walls had shifted, closing in on me. Mabel was sitting on the couch, her phone in her lap, eyes puffy and red. She had been crying. But the moment she saw me, she straightened, exhaling in visible relief. Oh, thank God. She stood up quickly, like she wanted to run to me, but something in my face made her hesitate. Clyde, I was so worried. I thought maybe. I held up a hand. Stop. She froze. I took a slow breath, forcing myself to stay in control. My voice was too calm when I spoke. How long were you going to lie to me? Her face crumpled. Clyde, months. I let the word hang in the air between us, heavy, suffocating. It's been months, Mabel. Her bottom lip trembled. Who told you that? I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. That's your response? Not it's not true. Not I'm sorry. Just who told you? Her eyes darted away. She was scrambling, reaching for something to anchor herself to. I didn't mean for this to happen, she whispered. I clenched my jaw. But it did. And it wasn't a mistake, was it? It wasn't just a one-time thing. You were never going to stop? Tears spilled down her cheeks. I didn't want to lose you. I inhaled slowly, forcing down the storm brewing inside me. You lost me the second you decided I wasn't enough. She sobbed then, covering her face with her hands. But I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folder, dropping it onto the coffee table. The sound made her flinch. What is this? She asked shakily. Divorce papers. Her breath hitched. She looked down at the folder, like it might burn her if she touched it. You already? I stopped by a lawyer's office before I came home. My voice was ice. This is happening. Her hand hovered over the papers. Can we talk about this? Please. I tilted my head, studying her. Talk? I repeated. Like the way you talked to Ben? Like the way you spent months lying to my face? She let out a choked sob. I still love you, Clyde. I stared at her for a long moment, then shook my head. No, I said simply. You love yourself. She opened her mouth, maybe to protest, maybe to beg, but I didn't stay to hear it. I turned and walked toward the door. Clyde, where are you going? I stopped at the threshold, gripping the doorknob. When I looked back at her, she was standing there, a mess of tears and regret. But regret wasn't love. I don't know yet, I admitted, but anywhere's better than here. And then I walked out, leaving her behind. For the first time in months, maybe years, I finally felt free.